Tessa not only listened, she now watched. There was a movement in the silent room. Miss Ludgate had turned her head. Tessa knew that Miss Ludgate had caught her listening to the sounds from the path outside. For some reason, the old lady was annoyed with Tessa for hearing them. But why? And why was there a look of terror on the poor old face? "Will you play something on the piano, Tessa?" Although it was a question, Tessa knew it was a command. She was to drown out the noise of the sweeping from outside. So Tessa played songs that allowed her to use the loud pedal. After half an hour, Miss Ludgate stood up. She gathered her shawl around her shoulders and hobbled to the door. She stopped on the way to say good night to Tessa. Tessa began to play softly. The sound of sweeping from the path outside had stopped now. Was Miss Ludgate ashamed because she had a gardener at work at this hour? And why was Miss Ludgate so terrified? Did it have anything to do with her belief that she would die in the autumn? The night was calm. Many more leaves will not fall tonight, Tessa thought. But the next morning, when Tessa walked out into the garden, the lung path was thickly covered with them. Toy, one of the gardeners, was sweeping them with a broom. "Hello," said Tessa. "A lot of leaves fell last night." Toy stopped sweeping and shook his head. "No, this little bunch came down with the wind in the early part of the evening. But they were all swept up. I heard somebody at work here after 9. Was it you?" The man grinned. "You will never catch any of us at work after 9 o'clock, he said. "Nobody has touched them until now. As soon as you sweep them up, more are waiting. At this time of year, 100 men could not keep this garden tidy." That night, Miss Ludgate went to bed early. Tessa went into the drawing room to pick up her book. She had taken only 2 steps into the room when she stopped and stood listening. It was now 9:30. In spite of what Toy Lad told her, somebody was sweeping the path. She tiptoed to the window and peeped out between the blinds. She could have walked out the door and into the garden, but she felt that she would rather see the mysterious worker, for the first time, from a distance. Then Tessa remembered that there was a window on the upstairs landing. She walked upstairs on tiptoe. Through the window, the moonlight threw a pale blue screen on the opposite wall. Tessa raised the window softly and silently and leaned out. On the path below her, a man was slowly sweeping with a stable broom. The broom swung and struck the path with a soft, crisp swish. The strokes were as regular as those of the pendulum of some slow clock. Tessa was unable to see most of the features of the figure underneath the window. It was a workman who seemed to be wearing old and baggy clothes. But there was something odd about the whole scene. She knew that there was something missing, yet she could not say what it was. Suddenly, she felt sick and dizzy. She stepped away from the window. The coward in Tessa urged her to go to bed and forget what she had seen. But the Tessa who despised cowards urged her to have courage. She said to herself, "Go down and see who it is and what's wrong with him." Tessa walked downstairs again. She unlocked the door and stepped into the moonlight. The sweeper was still at work where the path ended, and a gate led to the stable yard. The girl saw that he was not making progress with his work. The broom rose and fell, but the dead leaves remained beneath it. This was not what she had noticed. Something was still missing. Her footsteps made only a light noise on the path, but the sweeper heard them while she was still half a dozen yards away from him. He turned and looked at her. He was a tall man with the face of a corpse. His eyes bulged like huge rising bubbles. It was a foul, suffering face that could make you feel disgust or horror, but never pity. He was dressed in rags. The hands that grasped the broom seemed to be only skin and bones. He was so thin that Tessa thought he was almost transparent. She was sickened by the thought. They faced each other for a fraction of eternity. Then Tessa screamed. She suddenly realized the something that was missing. The path was flooded with moonlight, but the visitor had no shadow. She saw dimly through the figure that the ivy was moving upon the wall. As her mind raced to tell her that the thing was evil, she was left suddenly and dreadfully alone. The spot where the thing had stood was empty except for the moonlight and the litter of leaves. The next thing that Tessa remembered was being in the hall, faint and sobbing. She saw a light on the wall above and wondered if she was going to meet another horror. But it was only Mrs. Finch walking with a candle in her hand. "What is the matter, Miss Tessa?" "Have you been outside?" Tessa sobbed and tried to speak. "I have seen—" Mrs. Finch put her arm around the shivering girl. "Hush, my dear. I know what you have seen. You should not have gone out. I have seen it too, but only once. What is it? Now, don't be frightened. He doesn't come for you. It's Miss Ludgate that he wants. You have nothing to fear." "Where was he when you saw him?" "He was close to the end of the path near the stable gate." Miss Finch threw up her hands. "Oh, poor Miss Ludgate. Her time is growing short. The end is near now." "I must know," Tessa sobbed. "Tell me." "Come into my parlor and I'll make a cup of tea." "But you should not know tonight." "I must if I am to have any peace." The fire was still burning in Mrs. Finch's parlor. In a few minutes the tea was ready. Tessa took a sip and felt her courage returning. "I'll tell you, Miss Tessa," said the old housekeeper. "But don't let Miss Ludgate know I've told you." Tessa nodded. Miss Ludgate did not always give to beggars, not until about 15 years ago. She was old then, but active. She was fond of gardening. Late one afternoon, while she was cutting some roses, a beggar came to the side door. He was sick and starved. But you have seen him. I felt sorry for him. I was just going to risk giving him some food when Miss Ludgate walked up. "What is this?" she asked. "He whined about not being able to get work," I told her. "Work?" said Miss Ludgate. "You don't want work. You come here looking for a handout. If you want to eat, you will have to work first. There is a broom and there is a path covered with leaves. Start sweeping at the top. When you come to the end, you can come and see me." He took the broom. A few minutes later, I heard Miss Ludgate shout. I hurried out. The man was lying at the top of the path where he had started sweeping. He had collapsed and fallen. I didn't know then that he was dying. He gave Miss Ludgate a look that I cannot forget. "When I have swept to the end of the path," he said, "I'll be back for you, my lady. We will feast together. Just make sure that you are ready when I get there." Those were his last words. He was buried by the parish. It upset Miss Ludgate so much that she ordered something to be given to every beggar. Not one of them is to be asked to do a stroke of work. But the next autumn he came back and started sweeping right at the top of the path where he had died. We have all heard him, and most of us have seen him. Year after year he has swept with his broom. It makes a brushing noise, and it hardly moves a leaf. But when he gets to the end, well, I would not like to be Miss Ludgate with all her money. 3 evenings later, just before the hour for dinner, the sweeper completed his task. That is to say, if we believe Mrs. Finch's story. The servants heard somebody burst open the side door. 2 of them rushed into the hall. They saw that the door was open, but no one was there. Miss Ludgate was already in the drawing room. Tessa was still upstairs dressing for dinner. At that moment, Mrs. Finch walked into the drawing room to speak to Miss Ludgate. Mrs. Finch's screams warned the household of what had happened. Tessa heard them just as she was ready to go downstairs. She rushed into the drawing room. Miss Ludgate was sitting in her favorite chair. Her eyes were open, but she was dead. Her eyes here filled with a terror that Tessa could not bear to see. When Tessa stopped staring at Miss Ludgate, she saw something on the carpet. She bent down to pick it up. It was a little yellow leaf. She did not ask how it got there. She dropped it, shuddering. It looked as if it had been picked up by, and later fallen from, the birch twigs of a stable broom.